Hey, everybody, this is Justin Hampton, the founder of Compensation Tool, a salary survey management and benchmarking platform designed by comp people for comp people. And I am here today with you for another Comp Tool Tuesday, where we talk about a topic that has come up recently on one of the forums that I visit or through some conversations I've had with folks. And today, the conversation I want to talk about is what do you do when employees are sharing salary information? So this came up on one of the forums that I frequent not too long ago, where someone says that they've got several employees who are talking about their salaries and wages with one another, and it's creating some frustration amongst other employees who are finding out that their peers are paid more than they are, and they don't feel that's fair. So what's happening is this is actually getting up to some of the executive level roles where they're hearing about this consternation, they're hearing about these conversations, and they want to put a stop to it. And they have advised the HR manager to address this with employees to say, really, we don't want you guys to discuss your salaries and your wages with one another. It's a big problem. And it's not a big problem that employees are sharing their wages. It's a big problem that the executive level are asking the HR team to kind of discourage or otherwise prohibit employees from talking about salaries and wages. And this is in Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act. And I'm going to read that for you because the very first thing it says is that employers can do this. So if we look at this from the NLRB, you have the right, this is speaking towards employees, you have the right to act with coworkers to address work-related issues in many ways. Examples include talking with one or more coworkers about your wages and benefits or other working conditions. It's the first one. I think there's no clear sign that the NLRB is prohibiting management from discouraging or prohibiting employees from talking about these things. So I'll go on. Wages and benefits or other working conditions, circulating a petition to ask for better hours, participating in a concerted refusal to work in unsafe conditions, openly talking about your pay and benefits, and joining with coworkers to talk directly to your employer, to a government agency, or to the media about your problems in the workplace. This is the important part as it relates to us HR and compensation practitioners. Your employer cannot discharge, discipline, or threaten you or coercively question you about this protected concerted activity. And I do that because it's in quotation marks. So I think that it is crystal clear that the NLRB protects this kind of conversation, and that any acts from management or HR to discourage these kinds of conversations should not be taking place. It's very clear about this. And I think that this comes from more of a systematic problem. And generally speaking, I believe that these problems occur for a variety of different reasons. But I think most commonly, the one that we can most easily address is that the compensation program is not widely understood or it's not well communicated. It could be potentially inconsistent with how we are paying employees in similar jobs, and it could potentially be unfair. And I really think that there are two approaches to managing this challenge. And those two challenges or those two solutions come from ensuring that you have a well-defined and consistent and defensible compensation practice. And that really requires you to develop some kind of pay philosophy that you are adhering to during your promotional process, during your new hiring process where you're putting offers together. Oftentimes that can be facilitated and aided with creating salary ranges for each job or assigning each job to a pay grade that has a salary range. I think another thing that you would want to do is make sure that you are reviewing on a regular basis internal equity against employees. And a big piece of this can actually be done through improving the pay transparency that you have within your organization. And I don't necessarily mean that we need to take the same approach that the company Buffer does, where they are very transparent with all of their employees, where you can literally you can do this. You can go to buffer.com or go Google buffer.com salaries, and you can find a list of all of Buffer's employees and their actual rates of pay. Now, I have different feelings about, if that approach is the one I would recommend. I don't necessarily think that I would recommend that all companies go fully transparent, especially publicly, with their employees' information. But that is certainly an approach that all public entities are subject to because of freedom of information requests. But again, what we have found is that with the greater the transparency of your pay philosophy and the greater the education that you provide to your employees, the less frequently these kinds of conversations come up. So prohibiting employees or discouraging employees from sharing salary information, not only is it against the NLRB Section 7, it's also really not a solution for the problem. And that problem is an uneducated workforce around how compensation works. Because I think that really what we need to do is understand that pay is very personal to everybody. And for a lot of employees, it's a black box. A lot of employees don't understand where those numbers are coming from. And I have found through my own personal experience managing compensation programs here in the US and in the United Kingdom that by providing very transparent and providing educational sessions to employees, that is really the way that you can address that. And I don't mean sending out a memo to employees, saying we use X number of salary surveys, we conduct, studies to make sure that your pay is paid fairly. That doesn't really address the challenge. That doesn't really empathize with employees who understand or who believe that their pay may be unfair. If you pat them on the back and say, there, we really take a look at this, that's not going to solve any questions or solve any problems for your employees that may have already become skeptical because they have learned that an employee in a similar role or in the same role makes more than them. What you really would want to do is really kind of take some time out, create some educational programs that are either shared out across different parts of the organization or shared to managers so they can address these concerns with employees. What we really want to do is create some kind of documentation, create some kind of training programs to remove that black box. Because at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't trust that they're being paid fairly, they're going to go and look for another job, or they're going to become discouraged in their own job and disengaged. And that's not a really good sign for everybody. So if you develop the educational programs, if you reach out to employees, you are then controlling the conversation and you are able to have a better workforce that understands why they're paid what they're paid today, but how they can improve their pay tomorrow or the next day or during the next merit review cycle or during the next promotional process. It really just creates a much greater organization that's much more trusted by the employees. And it's going to keep you in line and not falling out of what the NLRB has expressly prohibited in the Section 7 of the NLRA. So again, just food for thought on another Compensation Tool Tuesday. Again, we will look to be moving these towards more lively conversations where we invite webinar guests. But today, this is a recorded session. But I do think it's an important one and would encourage any comments, feedback, any notes or great resources to go to in the comments below. Again, I'm Justin Hampton with the Compensation Tool. This is a Compensation Tool Tuesday. And again, I look forward to the next one and additional webinars that we may be having. If you have any questions about what we do or want to learn more about our services, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or go over to comptool.com and set up some time with us. We'd be happy to talk to you. Thanks a lot.